Biden's comments in the last hour or so, in the last few hours or so. Are you surprised at all by anything that he had to say?
Not at all. Israel's occupation, dispossession, ethnic cleansing and persecution of the Palestinian people has for decades been enabled by the United States. And in the context of the almost explicitly genocidal threats from Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant, his defense minister, we should take Joe Biden's statements as a green light to Israel to perpetrate more of the kind of massacres that it has been carrying out against the Palestinian people now for almost 80 years with total impunity.
And taking from that, you assuming that those massacres are just going to continue and become even worse. We were talking to an Israeli military analyst who said that tens of thousands of troops will be building up along the Gaza Strip there, ready to invade. Is that your fear too?
It's possible. We don't really know. What we can say for certain is that other than causing mass destruction and death, it will not change the situation that Israel is a colonial occupying power and the Palestinian people are struggling justly for their liberation. And anti-colonial liberation wars are something the world has seen, whether in Vietnam, whether in throughout Africa, South Africa in particular in recent decades. And an indigenous people that is fighting for its existence will fight back with great motivation, and that's what we saw in terms of the ability today of the resistance in Gaza to surprise Israel strategically and tactically, and to actually liberate and hold Palestinian territory beyond the borders of Gaza, despite the fact that they have far fewer resources than Israel and don't have the backing of any superpowers. That's kind of a sign of the motivation of Palestinians to liberate themselves once and for all from decades of living under the boot of this really brutal colonial regime whose brutality is being highlighted in the response from Israeli leaders.
Do you think that Hamas needs some of its allies in the region to step up here and actively get involved militarily?
Clearly, Hamas has allies in the region, and I suspect that some of the incredible tactics we've seen in terms of using drones to destroy Israel's vaunted Merkava tanks, to destroy automated machine gun nests, and to use other surprising tactical methods we've seen were developed in conjunction with those allies. Obviously, I'm not privy to the discussions they have, so I don't know what they may have in store. But what I can say is that the Palestinian people, in their just liberation struggle, have every right to receive assistance from wherever they can get it. That's a right that an occupied people exercising its legitimate right to resist has.
This has been called by many people a complete military and intelligence failure on the part of Israel to not have any idea that this military operation was coming. Is that how you see it as well?
Clearly, it was a colossal failure. I think it's an example of Israel believing its own arrogant propaganda about its own military, technological, and indeed racial superiority over the Palestinian people. They underestimated the ability of this indigenous people besieged in Gaza to devise tactics that would confound their oppressors and persecutors. So it is a massive failure. On a par, I've seen people saying, and I believe this, on a par with the October 1973 failure when Egypt managed to breach the so-called impregnable Bar-Lev line along the Suez Canal. But in this case, it really is historic because for the first time, the territory that Israel considers its own and onto Israeli territory in a quite dramatic and stunning way. Of course, there's no doubt that Israel will do what it always does, which is seek revenge against the vulnerable, against civilians. Remember that half the population of Gaza are children, more than 2/3 are refugees, and already we have Israeli ministers saying that they're going to cut off the electricity to Gaza, which is a war crime. And we have the threats from Netanyahu and Gallant that are, as I said, nearly explicit, if not outright explicit threats of genocide. And the crimes, the further crimes that they commit against the Palestinian people will not just be on the hands of those Israeli leaders, but also on the hands of Joe Biden, the European Union, and its member states who arm, fund, support this genocidal apartheid regime, one that doesn't believe the Palestinian people exist or have a right to exist, that has declared itself a state for Jews only, where only Jews will have sovereignty and self-determination. That's the logic of genocide, the logic of apartheid, and this is where it leads. And for too long, the world has sat by and allowed Israel to behave in this savage and barbaric way against the Palestinian people. And this is the inevitable result.
Okay, but just finally, where do we go from here? Is this going to continue to escalate, or is there any room at all for de-escalation?
I've said many times before on Al Jazeera and elsewhere that yes, it's going to escalate into an ever-increasing horror show. What we're seeing now is exactly what many of us have predicted, and it's the inevitable result of granting impunity to a regime that has absolutely no respect for international law, for basic humanity, and for the rights of the Palestinian people, who, this has to be said, this is often not mentioned, but the Palestinian people are the majority population in historic Palestine, in what is Israel, the Gaza Strip, and the West Bank. And this majority population has to have its rights, has to have its liberation, or there will be continued escalating, horrifying bloodshed. Let's say it clearly, Israel and its enablers are solely and fully responsible for what we see happening, and they can end it. But they have chosen this path, and they are reaping exactly what they have sown.
Okay, thank you so much. As always, we appreciate your time and your insights here on Al Jazeera. That is Ali Abunimah, a co-founder of Electronic Intifada. Thank you so much.